Let's get rocking, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Happy July 18th. I don't know where you're at in the world right now, but we got so much stuff to cover right now. There is this looming wall of debt that's hitting the real estate market that's crashing some stuff right now. Okay. This isn't the kind of mainstream stuff that you probably have seen before. So I want to dive into, I want to go behind the scenes and explain this. So first and foremost, we've got this crashing wall of debt happening in the commercial real estate market. I know some people will say, well, Nate, hold on. I have not seen my house prices drop yet. I have not seen prices in my area drop yet. Depending on what city you are in, that may be true, but some cities have seen that decline already. What I want to focus on right now for the next 3 minutes is the commercial market. I want to explain how big this actually is and how underplayed this is by mainstream media, because this is actually a whopper. If you compare this amount of debt that's being defaulted on right now to the amount that was defaulted on during the subprime mortgage crisis of 2007, 2008, this is so much bigger. Let me show you, okay? So they're saying now, you can read some articles on like Bloomberg about this $1.5 trillion. That's a T. That is not a B. That is not an M. That's a T. This is massive, okay? This debt on commercial properties is really, really big. Now, the graph that I'm pointing at right here on your screen, this is actually the amount of loans that have been issued, and this is specifically for commercial real estate loans. And you can see the balance of them coming right up in here in this 2023 range. We're at an all-time high, 3 trillion. If you go over here on the left-hand side, this equates to $3 trillion, okay? $3 trillion worth of loans are on balance sheets right now, okay? How does this affect you? Well, look at this. We have the largest fund that does real estate, specifically from Canada, that just defaulted on a bunch of US property debt. Office space, okay? They defaulted on them. They're one of the largest public real estate companies in the world. They defaulted on $161 million worth of their debt on their office space in the United States. They're not the only ones, by the way. There's several others that are strategically, as they say, defaulting on their debt here. What does that mean? What's the ripple effect of that? Well, when you have this much debt, and to put in perspective, like how much of this is actually like coming due right now, and why is this happening? Let me explain, okay? We have a whole bunch of, in the commercial real estate market, what happens is that people take out debt like this. It's usually, to buy a single family house, usually you get a 30-year fixed mortgage. When you buy one of these big buildings, whether it's an office or a multifamily or whatever, usually these are fixed for 5 years. Sometimes you can get longer term, but usually these are 5-year deals, okay? I would say that some of them can be 30 and 40 and all that kind of stuff, but typically 5, that's commonplace. And so a lot of people took out, that were buying office space and things like that, they bought these things 5-6 years ago, and they got some debt for that period of time. They didn't anticipate, number one, inflation to cause all of their costs to rise, things like insurance, employees, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. And then number two, they did not expect for interest rates to rise, okay? As an example, when we're talking about this big fund out of Canada and why they defaulted on their properties, it's because they didn't expect their debt to go from, it's here in the article, they didn't expect their debt to go from $300,000 on their monthly mortgage payment to $880 in 1 year. They just didn't see that coming. And so, whap, now all of a sudden you see them defaulting on their debt. They're defaulting on it, and it's causing this ripple. And watch what happens now, okay? 2023, we're at right now, there is about $400 billion worth of loans that have come due, okay? It's come due, and now the interest rates are much higher, the expenses are much higher, and so the folks that own those buildings, they're going to have a much harder time refinancing those loans. It's not like they can just walk into their local Wells Fargo and say, hey, will you refinance this for me? Because the local bank, they're going to look at the underwriting, they're going to say, well, based on today's interest rates and based on today's insurance prices, based on today's costs, like your property doesn't cash flow. It would negatively cash flow. We can't give you a loan for this. And so 2023, we've got 400 billion. 2024, we've got almost 500 billion coming due. 2025, we have more than this year. 2026 and 2027, we have more than 400 billion for both of those years that all comes due. So basically the next 5 years, we've got all of this commercial debt that's coming due, and they're walking into an environment that's much more expensive, and it's going to be harder for them to get loans. And that's why a lot of these companies are defaulting on it. Now, the worst part about all of this is that the folks that are holding this debt, it's not your Wells Fargo. It's not your, of course, they hold some of it, a very small percentage of it, but it's usually the small and regional banks that are holding a lot of this debt right now. Okay, so right here you can see community banks and regional banks hold more than 2 trillion of this. So of the 3 trillion, 2/3 of it is held by small and regional banks. Holy cow. What does that mean? Well, I mean, let's look at their actual balance sheet. Their balance sheet right now for most of these small banks, they're like 40% vested in these commercial loans. They're only 17.9% vested into residential loans. That means like your and my deposits that go to these small local banks, they're using it to make loans. And they've used the majority of it, it's their biggest piece of their portfolio, on these commercial loans. And so if anyone's going to get rocked, it's going to be these small local community banks, because oftentimes they have to write down these loans. I'll get to that in a little bit, and I'm going to get to what you can do in the midst of all of this, okay? There's a huge, huge opportunity for savvy real estate folks like you and I to be able to dive in and actually say, okay, where's the calamity? Where's the problem? What can I do to profit in this situation? And I want to actually break through that and show you that while we're here together, okay? So let me go back at this. I like my charts and graphs and my numbers, so hang with me for a minute on this, okay? What I want to show you on this is the Fed's balance sheet. What I want to show you specifically on this is that what happens when basically we have calamity, usually recessions, things like that. Usually what happens is that loans start to dry up. There's a credit crisis. We have banks collapsing, and all of a sudden there's less loans being written. And you can see here, right on where we're sitting right now, there are less loans being written right now, okay? That's kind of an obvious one, right? In the middle of a recession with high interest rates and all that kind of stuff, people are nervous, people are scared, there's less people borrowing. But what always accompanies this, when these loans start to level off, this is another glance at like the loans, that we hit a peak, and then now all of a sudden we're starting to come down right here, right at the very end, we're starting to come down, a number of loans being written. What always happens during a loan period that's shrinking is that there's recession activity. It happened in 2008 to 2010. It happened in 2001. It happened the beginning during COVID. If you look at each of these gray lines, gray bars that you see on this graph, that's a recession. Here's another recession right here. And it's always correlated when loans stop being written. There's less money flowing to the economy. There's less money being borrowed. So there's always a recession correlated to it. And so when people keep saying, well, we missed the recession, we dodged it, it's not so bad, things are already getting better, I don't think that those people are actually looking at the underlying economics. I think that they're completely missing it. In fact, if you look, I want to show you just a comparison, okay, how big this problem is. Back in 2007, when we had the whole, they call it the subprime mortgage crisis, subprime loans, they were issued, and it took the balance sheet of loans from 332 billion to 1.3 trillion. 1.3 trillion. Well, what the heck does that mean? Remember back to the beginning of this, I said that the next sector of loans that is in default right now, it's actually $3 trillion worth of loans. It's not 1.3 trillion, it's 3 trillion. It's more than double what caused the subprime mortgage crisis. So when people are saying, well, hey, no, we're good, we're past all that stuff, like recession's over, the housing market already corrected, I just don't know what math they're looking at. Yes, there is a shortage of inventory in this country on housing, but that shortage can be solved really, really fast. I'm not even kidding. Like, look at Florida as an example. I live in the great state of Florida. I love Florida. Just a year ago, You listed a property. I did. I listed a property. I had multiple people coming at it. I got an appraisal on one property for 1.1 million. Now today, try to get 1.1 million out of that same property. It's not going to happen. No way. Yes, there could be anomalies with some specific zip codes, but the state as a whole, everything is slowed down. The days on market now for the state of Florida, it's the second worst in the country. In anytime that stuff starts sitting on the market longer and longer and longer, what typically happens is that sellers start dropping the price. They try to meet the market where it's at. And that's just the progression of what happens. So to the folks out there that are saying, no, there's no downturn whatsoever, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to show me the data that you're looking at, because it's just not true. The data that's here right now, it massively predicts that we're going to have some fallout from all this. There is a safe asset class still in the midst of all this. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Tell you what it's not, though. What do you think it's not? Let me know in the comments. Before I show this, what do you think it's not? What is the worst in the real estate? Yeah, we could talk about the stock market and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a stock market guy. I don't like it. I like to be able to control and touch and feel in my assets. But in the real estate sector, which is it not? Which one's probably going to take the most brutal beating over the next couple of years? What do you think that is? For those of you that have typed office space, you're probably right. My crystal ball says office space. Check this thing out. Okay, this is the AT&T Tower. This is the largest office building in the state of Missouri. This happens to be in St. Louis, Missouri. They've been trying to sell this thing forever. Okay, back in the last time that it sold for $200 million. $200 million, and right now it's under contract. I don't know if it's closed yet or not, but it's allegedly being sold at a 95% discount. 95% discount. So the bondholders on this one had to take it through foreclosure and all that kind of stuff. So this is a massive write-down. This is what happens when you get into massive vacancies and problems and things like that, like 95% write-down. I'm not saying that all of them are going to go down by 95% by any means. There's not a perfect asset out there that survives every storm, but there's some that are better than others. Now, flip it over to an asset class that I really like. Okay, I really like apartment buildings. Okay, multifamily housing. In the last recession, the last downfall, it was a very resilient asset. And the thing that I particularly like about it is that I really believe that apartments already took the downfall that they're going to take. Let me explain what I mean by that. They dropped year over year about 11.2%. And the primary reason for that drop in valuation, it wasn't that their rents dropped per se. Most of their rents were pretty resilient. Some cities that went up too fast, they've corrected, like Austin and whatnot. Austin, Phoenix, a couple others. But it's not because of that. It's because interest rates have gone up so much. When debt costs more, the buyer of the property can pay less. That's just it, bottom line. And now I'm benefiting from that. I'm buying properties cheaper than I would have a year ago because the debt costs more. I'm underwriting the higher cost of debt into every single equation that I'm doing right now. And so although apartments had a little bit of a slip, it's not like a 95% write down like the office space right there. And now I think that we're going to start to see some upticks on some of the markets across the country too. Now, the other thing that I want us to really pay attention to is the economic news. I know that the administration came out and they're all like pumping and jumping saying, oh, we got 209,000 jobs, blah, blah, blah. We're good. No, recession avoided. We're good. Total false narrative. I'm so sorry, but in the same report, if you read the fine print, go all the way down to the bottom, read the fine print, and you'll see that what actually happened is that they revised down 33,000 in May and 306,000 or 77,000 from April. They've revised down. So their real net gain right here, their real net gain, they're saying it's 110,000 lower than their actual reports. So there's a whole bunch of revisions in here. And if you factor in 110,000 off of their current numbers, that's not a very good month. That's actually, in fact, a terrible month. But congruent with what we've seen in the past, they changed a lot of things. They changed the target so it doesn't look as bad. So it is what it is. I digress. I move on. Okay. Now, to the pundits out there that are saying, well, housing dodged the bullet because we've already seen an uptick in price. We've seen this uptick right here. This is all 2023 right here on the graph. We've seen the uptick from, it's late 2022 and early 2023. We've seen the uptick that's seasonal. Every season in the months of March, May, April, June, July, sometimes August, depending on the state that we're talking about or the city that we're talking about, that is the biggest peak of the year for real estate. People don't move very much over Christmas. Instead, they wait until spring and summer. Spring and summer is like biggest moving seasons for people. And it's when the market's moving. It's when houses are selling. And so that was a seasonal uptick. And even to the folks that, if you say, well, hey, it looks like it's a bigger seasonal uptick, blah, blah, blah. It really depends on the city that we're talking about, but I'm still going to punch some holes in that theory. Here's why. Go back in time and look at the 2006 run-up in values right here. Okay, this will take us back to 2006, the peak that we hit. And notice that it started to drop. And then all of a sudden, this little spot right here on your screen, hopefully you can see that okay, right in the center of the screen, a little bit up, you can see that value started to come back up. And so people thought there was a peak, and then all of a sudden it dropped, and then people started to think, oh yeah, great, we avoided the housing crash, we're going to keep on going. And then the next 4 years turned into a pure hell based on their logic. And so I encourage everyone to just ask a lot more questions. Ask a lot more questions. Don't believe everything that you're hearing on MSNBC or CNBC, or I'm picking on the NBCs out there right now. I shouldn't do that per se, but I just don't believe the false narratives that are being pumped right now. Look at the underlying data for yourself. I geek out on this stuff. I look at the data because I want to know the truth of what's actually happening in real estate. There's definitely opportunity right now, but it's not what it seems on the surface. It isn't this huge housing rally. We avoided recession, all that kind of stuff. No. We're still in the middle of the woods. And so here's the benefit to that, okay? So Warren Buffett always says that when other people are greedy, we should run. We should walk away. And when other people are running or walking away, that's when we should be greedy. Right now, when you see the reports that office space is tanking and that commercial real estate or apartment buildings are down by 11.2% year over year, that's going to cause people to run from that. That's the opportunity. That's when we step in and grab those properties. Maybe in an office space, you grab it and you reposition it as a multifamily property. Yes, there's some zoning changes that we'll have to go through. Yes, there's additional mechanical expenses, things like that. But there are plays out there that you can do. Okay. Now, I don't have time to get into all of this right now, but there's two other underlying things happening right now in the marketplace. Residential foreclosures are picking up right now. You can Google it. You'll see it. It's out there. They're picking up. There was a huge glut that got caught during the whole COVID thing. The government froze foreclosures and they wouldn't let it happen. And now all of a sudden those are being worked through because there's no more administrative blocks on foreclosures. And so we're going to see a rise in foreclosures as people lose their jobs, have their hours cut, things like that. It's a sad reality, but people are going to go through foreclosure. Just because they have equity in their property, just because their value shot up by 50% over the last 5 years or whatever it is, doesn't mean that they can withstand and keep making monthly payments if they lose their job. Okay, there's a lot of people, like my office takes those phone calls. We speak to sellers in that position all the time. And so we're going to see a rise in foreclosures. It's going to happen in the residential frontier. So this is a frontier to watch. This is a frontier where you can start buying properties. We're going to talk quite a bit about this. I've got a big event for the next 3 days that we're going to dive deep into that and which cities are being hit the hardest and how you can buy them and all that kind of stuff. The other big one that we're going to talk about a lot at the event is this whole Airbnb revenue collapse. There was a viral tweet that went and showed data from alltherooms.com. That's a data house that tracks the short-term rental game. And they showed that there's rental decline, there's revenue drops for short-term rentals of up to almost 50%, 46%, 47% in some of these cities. And there's some challenges to the data and all that kind of stuff, but holy cow, I'm seeing it. Like I know I have clients that own tons of short-term and midterm rentals, and they're seeing it and they're feeling it too right now. And so it's a very, very real thing. In fact, I started reaching out to people that own short-term rentals just to kind of test the waters, and started asking if they wanted to sell. And I'm closing on one cabin in a week here. And then I've got another one that I'm really, really close to having the contract locked up on. And so there's some opportunity here. And so for the next 3 days, I'm going to cover that at the event too. Anyways, that's where the opportunity is. It's where when everybody else starts to run, that's when you can lean in. And if you're like, well, Nate, what would you do with a property that, it's a short-term rental right now? What would you do with it to make money off of it if those revenues are dropping? Well, why not underwrite it as an annual rental? Why not buy it at the appropriate numbers? Buy it at today's numbers and use it for today's purposes. And you might just get yourself a fully furnished property that someone bought 3 years ago with a 3.5% interest rate that you could probably even take over their loan if you know what you're doing. And you could just buy it from them, make them the payments, and then you turn that into a midterm rental, which is more like corporate 30-day rentals, or just a furnished annual rental. There's a lot of things you can do with it. It's all about the buy. You got to know how to buy them at the right numbers. Okay. I would normally give you guys an invite and say, hey, come to our event, but we totally sold out our VIP tickets. If you want a general admission ticket, you can still probably grab one of those. I don't know how many are left, but we had a full house. So the next 3 days, I get to break this stuff down. I get to go really, really deep on it. You can either drop a comment down below that just says ticket, just say ticket in the comment down below, and Mike can try to get you hooked up with one of those, or go to homeinvestschool.com, and you can grab one of the general admission. The VIP spots, though, they're already sold out, 100% full. And so just buckle up. We're going through some stuff right now. It's very reminiscent. If you guys remember when Bear Stearns crashed back in 2007, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's an anomaly. That's an anomaly. Like, we're totally financially secure as a country. And then just start counting the days from it. Go back and look at this. 6 months later is when Lehman Brothers went down. And then the calamity just turned from bad to worse after that. 6 months. Okay. It was March until September is when it all went down. It was 2008. I shouldn't say 2007. It's all 2008. March, Bear Stearns, and then 6 months later, September, Lehman Brothers, and then the rest just dominoed. Guess what we had happen March this year? SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, went down March this year. What's coming up right around the corner? 6 months, September. If it mirrors the same, and that's crystal ball talk, right? But if it mirrors the same timeline, that easily could domino. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be 6 months to the time period. I'm not at all. But I'll tell you what I am saying. Silicon Valley Bank was not the only one that went down. We've had 3 banks that have shown their stress fractures. They've shown their risk and their how much assets they really don't have, and how many bad assets they have. They've already shown that. And so I don't know when it will all kind of come to play. But what I do know is that I'm poised, I'm ready, I'm following the data. I'm going to pick up a lot of properties, lots. We've had the blessing and privilege of doing over 1,400 properties since I started in this business. And I'm more geared up today than I ever have been to buy properties. I will get so many assets with God's grace, of course. I don't want to do anything without that. But if God wills it, I will get so many more assets this round, and I will do so much good kingdom work with that. Like, it's going to be craziness. So hopefully you can join for the ride. The last time that all this kind of shook down, there were some assets that I got that literally have tripled in value. One of them I bought for $22,000 that recently sold for $200,000. That was almost a 10x in valuation in like 11 years roughly. And I can't say that all of them will do that, but heck, if you could get this office building that's being sold at a 95% discount, imagine that. Remember this office building that I showed you? Let me see if I can find it quick. This office building, I can't find it. Doesn't matter. But that office building in St. Louis, Missouri, sold for 200 million at one point. Now it's being written down by 95%. Imagine being able to score something like that. It doesn't have to be a giant office building, but imagine if you could get what was once $1 million property for 200,000. Imagine that. And then rent it out for a while, collect rent on it, ride through the storm, and then on the back side of this, pop it back out and sell it. Imagine those kinds of plays. Those plays are made when the rest of the market is scared, when the rest of the market is nervous. Okay. So that's how you do it. It's not very complicated. All right. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the next round. Thank you so much. If you've got a question or a comment, I would love to hear it below. And if you could do me one massive favor and smash that like button or put a heart there, I would appreciate it. It helps get the word out to more people, and just trying to shed some light and some truth on what's actually happening. Okay. Thanks, guys. God bless. See you soon.